If you somehow couldn't tell based on the previous two videos in this series, I am a huge fan of the Greek God of War games, more so than the Norse ones. So, how do you think I felt when an entire Greek era themed DLC expansion for God of War Ragnarok was revealed? Well, here's your answer.
There he
Holy
is.
shit!
There he
Wait,
is.
is it?
Holy
There
shit!
he is.
It is! Oh my god!
Allow me to explain why I feel God of War Ragnarok Valhalla is the perfect DLC expansion. As I mentioned in part 1, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla was a free DLC update added to the game on December 12, 2023. Fun fact, it's also the first DLC expansion the God of War series has ever gotten. This DLC can be accessed at any point from the main menu, but everyone, from the developers to me, recommend you complete the main game first, as this takes place directly after the events of the story. Valhalla introduced both a new epilogue and a brand new roguelite game mode, so I'll spend this section going over both. Valhalla takes place sometime after the ending. Asgard has fallen, Odin is dead, Atreus left to search for the other giants, and Freya is designing a brand new council. We open with a shot of Sigurd's throne, and then Kratos appears, paddling a boat along a desolate wasteland accompanied only by Mimir. Mimir tells Kratos that he knows nothing about Valhalla, and the two discuss whether it was a good idea not to tell Freya he was going to Valhalla. When Kratos reaches the shores of Valhalla, he immediately feels weaker, as if an omnipresent entity stripped his powers from him. He is then presented by a locked door with the phrase, "to be one's own master," which Kratos interprets as "master thyself." He then pries the doors to Valhalla open and gets to explore the lower realms, starting with Valgrind. After some time, he reaches what looks like an untouched pocket of Asgard. Mimir again reiterates that this is something Freya could have helped with, saying it wasn't smart to avoid her. Kratos says that he isn't avoiding her and values her, but thinks she just sees him as useful. After Kratos dies for the first time, he wakes back up on the shore. Freya, Sigrun, Eir, and Gunnar are there to meet him, though Freya seems displeased at Kratos barging into Valhalla. Kratos reveals to her that an invitation letter was nailed to their door 3 days ago. The letter says,
Kratos of Sparta, you are hereby invited to a challenge. Face the past, face the future. Master Valhalla master himself. And then directions here.
Freya realizes Kratos wants to go back into Valhalla and says she can't join them because unlike Kratos and Mimir, she never died. She also mentions that Valhalla draws from the memories of those who enter, making the "master thyself" line make more sense.
How did you even get past the gate?
I forced it open.
With his bare hands.
He forced it open.
Before going back in, Freya asks Kratos if he's still considering what she's asked of him and sort of angrily walks away. According to Sigrun, Valhalla requires you to complete the ritual of selection before entering, which just means selecting your Spartan Rage and Shield. Kratos then goes to Eir and Gunnar so they can discuss the values and rules of Valhalla. Gunnar says that Valhalla isn't just about overcoming obstacles, it's about how you overcome them, and is ultimately a test of progress. Eir says that Valhalla seeks to foster wholeness and balance in its participants, and that it'll encourage you to and reward you for switching around your playstyle. Everyone gathers around the gate and chants the door open. Now that the gate is open, Kratos can enter Valhalla without suffering the penalty of breaching. Now, the story is going to be broken down into multiple runs, so get ready to hear after his X run a whole lot. It's here that Mimir reveals two key details. This Asgard is simply a manifestation of Kratos' interpretation of Asgard, which explains why it's all broken. He also reveals that Freya wants him to become the Norse god of war. Kratos is hesitant to accept the role because of the crimes he committed as the Greek god of war. Kratos believes that Freya's idea of creating a new council is a noble one, but doesn't believe he's right for the role of god of war. Mimir thinks the complete opposite, however. In his eyes, there's no one better suited for the role than the general that led Ragnarok. Kratos says that he has helped and will continue to help Freya and fight for peace, and Mimir thinks that the people need a god committed to them and themselves, and that Kratos has put his past behind him. Kratos returns to the Asgard sanctuary and finds them ascending sands. He walks through them and he finds his old throne from Greece. A mysterious voice then starts talking and...
Kratos, I have not forgotten the debt I owe you.
Holy shit, it's Helios! After a headache, he wakes back up on the shore. Kratos is determined to find out who invited them to Valhalla. He reaches the Asgard sanctuary again and finds the 3 judges from Greece as well. Mimir mentions the Helios voice they heard earlier and assumes he could help them because of the debt line. Kratos then tells Mimir what the context of that scene in God of War 3 was. Kratos tries to enter the Ascending Sands again, but is forced to fight a Valhalla's Chosen. More on this later. After he does, he enters the throne room again, and Mimir has been replaced with Helios.
Congratulations, old friend. You really are going places in Valhalla.
Where's Mimir?
Is that really all you have to say to me? After all this time? Can't muster up so much as hello for one of your most auspicious victims?
Hello, Helios. Where is Mimir?
How should I know? Why don't we go look for him?
Fun fact, Helios is voiced by Crispin Freeman, who previously voiced Helios in God of War 3. After their reunion, Kratos finds a chain of balance and finds Greece. After walking through the Ascending Sands, he ends up in the Chamber of Sacrifice from God of War 1. In God of War 1, Kratos travels through this chamber and sacrifices an Athenian soldier to open the way forward. Here, he opens a cage and places Helios in it. He then has to fight some Olympian sentries and push the cage closer to the sacrifice room. After some time, he activates his Spartan Rage and... It's so beautiful. I am so glad I didn't have this part spoiled for me. I was straight euphoric seeing the Blade of Olympus in all its glory again. Kratos brings the cage into the sacrifice room, turns the wheel, and then...
I swear, you haven't changed one solitary...
Brother? What am I doing in here?
He tries pulling the wheel to stop it, but only rips it off. He then runs up to the cage and tears it open, breaking Valhalla entirely. While they're falling, a burning Sigrun flies into the sea and grabs the two and then opens a portal back to the shore. On a side note, what do you guys think that giant red portal would have done to them?
He did the same joke about 3 times already. I don't think it's funny anymore.
After a heartfelt reunion between Sigrun and Mimir, Air and Gunnar arrive to aid Sigrun. During Kratos' next run, Mimir tells him that when Helios took his place, he was in a dreamlike forest. Later on in the game, we learn that Mimir is reliving his memories of serving King Oberon and Queen Titania. Upon returning to Greece, we're now tasked with killing multiple Valhalla's Chosen to access the Ascending Sands. Entering the sands puts us back in the Chamber of Sacrifice. Kratos activates the trap and then hops in the cage, burning himself. After cooking himself for dinner, he emerges in a random coliseum and finds Mimir on a random pedestal. We also meet Tyr, again, the real Tyr this time. He's the one responsible for sending Kratos the invitation.
Is that true?
Tyr.
You a little trickster?
Tyr says that he understands why Kratos is so hesitant to become the new God of War and is willing to help him the only way he can, by beating the shit out of him until he's prepared to enter this giant door. Okay, Tyr.
You'll get me next time.
After beating Tyr, Kratos walks up to the door to open it, glances inside of it, and has a headache. After blacking out, he admits he's not ready to see what's behind the door, and Tyr is still willing to help prepare him for it. When escaping the lower realms in the next run, Kratos will see the first of 3 important relics. This is the Oath Stone from God of War Ascension, a very unexpected but very welcome reference. Kratos and Tyr recall his fight against the barbarian army in God of War 1.
Why show me this?
Well, if I had to guess, probably to make you feel like the piece of shit you are.
Is he necessary?
He's no part of my design. He's either Valhalla's or yours.
Later, Tyr asks Kratos what kind of a general he was. He responds by saying he was determined, fearless, and strong. His men were extremely loyal to him, and he was determined to never lose a fight. Kratos asks Tyr why he wants Kratos to become the Norse God of War. Tyr's answer is that mortals currently believe he's dead. However, they're praising Kratos for being the hero that led Ragnarok. Not only that, but his combat prowess makes him more than qualified for the role. When returning to Greece, Kratos will find the Oath Stone at the Chain of Balance and pick it up. After some time, we return to Tyr. After the fight, Tyr invites Kratos to see another perspective of him pledging his allegiance to Ares. If the barbarian horde wasn't stopped, Sparta would have been overrun and appeased, possibly leading to its destruction. And as Sparta's most renowned general, Kratos had a duty to protect the city at all costs. This included brokering a deal with the God of War. The point of this exercise is to show Kratos that he can accept his actions as being based on the information known at the time, not what is known now. Kratos still isn't ready to see what's beyond the door, so he returns to the shore. The next time you escape Valgrind, a replica of Helios' shield will appear and then fall into the pool. We then see the story of Helios' death in God of War 3. Helios angrily points out that his death caused the death of the sun, leading to eternal darkness, cold, and famine. Kratos will later pick up the shield in Greece. On your next successful run, Tyr will chalk up Kratos' actions to being hurt internally. He then brings up the events of God of War Chains of Olympus, Kratos restoring the sun and rescuing Helios. Kratos points out that this predates Helios' murder in God of War 3, and Tyr uses this to prove a point. That point being his legacy is very complicated. Misfortune has the ability to bring anyone to madness, but it's our wisdom and vigilance that helps us combat it. Tyr believes this is thanks to the console he's managed to accrue for himself. With this, we return back to the shore. When we return, Freya talks to Kratos again, saying that she doesn't want him to change who he is just to become the Norse god of war. She wants to use the opportunity they've been given by destroying Asgard and believes Kratos' presence alone will instill hope in the populace. When next escaping Valgrind, you'll return to the throne room and see Pandora's statue, along with the manifestation of the story of Hephaestus and Pandora. Back in God of War 1, Kratos opened the box seeking a way to kill Ares. He got Athena's power of hope, but the evils of the world infected the gods and turned them crazy. Zeus then blamed Hephaestus for all this, torturing him until he gave up Pandora. Then, shortly after Kratos meets Hephaestus, the latter catches wind of Kratos' plan to use Pandora to access the box again. Not wanting this, Hephaestus devises a plan to trick Kratos and kill him, only for it to backfire. As with the other relics, Kratos collects Pandora's statue in Greece. On your last successful run, Tyr brings up the ending to God of War 3, Kratos killing himself and giving the power of hope to Greece. Tyr suggests that Kratos still has hope inside him, even bringing it with him to Scandinavia. He says that the concepts of hope, fear, etc. live within all of us. It's up to us to decide which ones guide us. With this, Kratos sees the truth and is finally ready to see what's behind the door. He walks through the door and sees his younger self sitting on Ares' throne. Thus starts one of the best sequences I've ever seen in a video game. Oh yeah, a few months ago, my friend sent me a meme that's this scene, but with a bunch of Gen Alpha slang. So now I can't see this scene without hearing Riz and fucking Skibbity.
God of War. God of Riz. Of Skibbity. Of Fortnite. Just a god that I know I can never deserve.
Let me break this down for you. Kratos understands what it meant to take the throne and the legacy that comes with it. He believes he's chasing a redemption that he feels deep inside he doesn't deserve, and says this makes him a god of fools. He then pulls out Pandora's statue, remembering what she said to him. He says young Kratos lost everyone and everything he cared for and became a monster. He then immediately realizes it was him that became a monster. He questions now whether he should sit on the throne and lead again, and if there will still be enough inside him to not become his younger self again. He doesn't know, yet he still has hope. He calls young Kratos cruel and selfish, but deep inside he's more than that. There's always been more under the surface. Young Kratos then leaves and the throne becomes vacant, leading Kratos to claim it. He pulls Mimir's head out of his ass and sits him on the throne's arm, and the two sit in silence for a while. And roll credits. After the credits, Kratos steps out of the throne, having fulfilled his prophecy and becoming the god of hope. And I'm going to mention this now because it's not directly related to the main narrative. Sometimes you'll be able to collect artifact sets from Valgrind. The first is the boat captain's key from God of War 1. The second is Lyssandra's necklace from God of War Ascension. Finally, you'll collect Calliope's flute from God of War Chains of Olympus. Every time Kratos collects one of these, he'll tell their stories to Mimir. With the key, Kratos tells Mimir about the boat captain. During the fight against the Hydra, Kratos needed his key to access his quarters where a bunch of women were trapped. However, the Hydra eats the boat captain. Kratos kills it, enters its mouth, and finds the captain, who believes he's being saved. However, Kratos grabs his key and rips it off of him, letting him plummet and get killed. This was all for nothing, as the women had died before Kratos got to the quarters. After this, he becomes a recurring character / running gag throughout the series.
No! Not you again!
Kratos is torn over this because in his eyes, the captain's death was the most needless and it would have cost nothing to show him mercy. With the necklace, Kratos says his thoughts on Lysandra are complicated. Despite that, he loved her and she saw good things in him even though he couldn't. Lysandra believed that Kratos didn't have to do all this needless killing, that it was a choice. Kratos refused to listen, believing his carnage was the only way to prosperity for the Spartan Empire. He then says that she was a good wife and he was a terrible husband. He placed his duties as a general over his duties as a husband, so at this point she serves as a reminder of his failures. Also, fun fact, this is the first time Lysandra was name-dropped in a mainline God of War game. With the flute, Kratos is quick to tell Mimir that Calliope's murder is not the story the flute brings to mind. Instead, it's the events of God of War Chains of Olympus. During his quest to rescue Helios, he hears Calliope play her flute, which leads him to the fields of Elysium. When reuniting with her, Persephone arrives and tells him that she'll break the Pillar of Creation, destroying Elysium in the process. In order to protect Calliope, Kratos abandons her again to stop Persephone. Kratos many times wished he had made the choice to stay with Calliope instead. He doesn't know how long they would have had together, but he preferred a few hours with her over the rest of his life. It took meeting Faye for that feeling to go away, along with the song that Calliope played on her flute. There's also another ending cutscene you can unlock after you've exhausted all of Mimir and Sigrun's dialogue options. To quickly sum it up, Valhalla is angry at Sigrun for breaking the rules to rescue Kratos and Mimir, so it demands a sort of penance. She doesn't know if she's ready to take on the challenge. Instead, she wants to go on a soul-searching journey to try and find inner peace. At the shore, Sigrun holds Mimir in her hands, and Mimir pours out his feelings for her. She tells him that she wants to be with him, but only after she's become whole, not needing to rely on anyone or anything to make herself happy. After her farewell, she leaves. I am being 100% honest and genuine when I say this. How the fuck was this free? This DLC is everything I've been asking for from the Norse game since God of War 2018. All I wanted was clear-cut examples of Kratos' misdeeds from Greece and how he's evolved past the monster he was 1,000 years ago. In these games, they've amounted to nothing more than references or teaching other people how to be better. Kratos killing Zeus was used to teach Atreus that they must break the cycle of patricide. The deaths of Lysandra and Calliope were used to teach Freya that exacting her vengeance won't bring her peace. Kratos' evolution throughout Ragnarok was used to teach Thor that he shouldn't be defined by his legacy. Valhalla is all about making Kratos better. These were his actions and his alone to learn from. With help from Tyr and Mimir, Kratos is able to reflect on the sins he committed and accept them for what they were, mistakes he made with the knowledge he had at the moment. When pledging his allegiance to Ares, how could he have known that Ares was planning on setting up Lysandra and Calliope's deaths? He's also able to reconcile with himself, realizing there is still a sliver of humanity left in him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have killed himself and released the power of hope into Greece. Kratos is able to come to the realization that his legacy is incredibly complex. Yes, he was a murderous monster, but he was still human. He was just as capable of feeling fear, hate, love, hope as everyone else was, and these all influenced his actions just the same. He has a very complex legacy, and Valhalla is all about him coming to terms with it. Using his legacy, he can shape himself into an arbiter of hope and justice, just as Pandora would have wanted. In short, I absolutely love the story. It doesn't suffer from being a bloated mess in the end like Ragnarok's main story. In fact, it kind of feels like 2018 in a sense, since that was also a story focused on Kratos. It's all about making himself better. Going through the trials and tribulations Valhalla provided, Kratos is able to shine as a beacon of hope, no longer shackled by his crimes in Greece. And with this, his story is now complete, at least until they make another game. I also want to comment on the way Tyr was handled in Valhalla. If you remember, back in part 1 I criticized the game's usage of Tyr. Why is the direct mythological parallel to Kratos not featured as much in this game? Reminder, this is not Tyr, this is Odin. This does not count as Tyr's characterization because it's supposed to be a direct mockery of him and an illusion. We're constantly told how altruistic and selfless Tyr is, how all he wanted was for the realms to strive in peace, but we don't get to see that in Ragnarok because for 80% of the game, the only Tyr we see is a parody of him. While I praised the fact that the Tyr we spent the game getting to know was Odin in disguise, I pointed out that it worked against the real Tyr. The main game portrayed him as a coward, and the post-game didn't add anything substantial to his character. This is added on top of the fact that in part 1 he was nowhere to be seen. Wait, hold on, why did I say part 1 and not God of War 2018? This is added on top of the fact that in God of War 2018 he was nowhere to be seen. His only characterization came in the form of boat dialogue, artifacts, or general idle chatter. We learned that he wanted to broker peace between the Aesir and Jotnar, but we don't get to see anything like that. Here, he actually gets to be developed as a character and we get to see his raw power. We see that while he isn't a bloodthirsty warmonger, he can still hold his ground in a fight. He's benevolent, wise, and courteous, basically everything Kratos should be as the God of Hope. He's one of the best parts about Valhalla, and for good reason. I want to add something else before ending this section, but this is assuming the rumors of a God of War 1 remake are real. I feel like in terms of the story, Valhalla is perfect for setting new players up for the lore of 1. It doesn't necessarily retcon anything major, but it does help explain some of Kratos' motives and let players view some of his heinous deeds, like sacrificing the Athenian soldier. That way, they aren't completely thrown off guard when experiencing it in the remake. Hopefully this setup will prevent a bad faith narrative about the Greek games from spawning like it did when 2018 first released. Valhalla is a roguelite game mode. Before each run, you can go to multiple tablets and select permanent upgrades. One tablet allows you to permanently upgrade your stats like your vitality, rage, cooldown, runic, etc. The second tablet lets you increase your rewards per run, like extra seals when breaking pods or generating health after a fight, or giving the chance for a runic attack to be leveled up. Fun fact, at the Tablet of Influence, there's a debuff you can acquire called the Penalty of Breaching. This applies the same effects you had during your very first run. Your power is severely weakened, and you constantly lose health until near death. I saw online that beating tier with the Penalty of Breaching will give me Mastery difficulty will unlock the Run of Obliteration. Also, before your run, you can select which shield you have and which Spartan Rage you can use, including the new one, Legacy. Legacy lets you summon the Blade of Olympus and use basic attacks like Light, Heavy, and Shield Break. Legacy doesn't actually heal you as much as Fury and Valor do, but if you parry an attack, you'll refill some Rage. You'll always start your run in Valgrind. You can choose an upgrade here called Glyphs that determines what kind of glyphs you're going to get later on. If you couldn't tell, glyphs are just the weapon, enchantment, and armor bonuses from the main game, but rebranded for Valhalla. After escaping Valgrind, you'll swap between two different stages, arenas and sanctuaries. Arenas are simple combat encounters with the way forward open by completing said fight. In sanctuaries, you can open chests which give you more upgrades and choose what your reward is for your next combat encounter. Occasionally inside a sanctuary, you'll find the burdens of Valhalla. This requires you to place a major debuff on yourself for a few fights. In turn, you'll unlock a powerful glyph. You keep clearing arenas until you find a Valhalla's chosen enemy. Valhalla's chosen arenas force you to fight a specific empowered enemy. Killing them will open the way forward. After you beat Valhalla's chosen, you return to another sanctuary where you can enter the Ascending Sands. Entering the sands will force you to fight a mini-boss anywhere from the Jerky, to Fisk, to Olaf Nelson, to even Magni and Modi in later playthroughs. After defeating the mini-boss, you'll walk through either the Muspelheim, Niflheim, or Helheim sanctuaries depending on which weapon path you take. You can then head straight for Greece. When you first arrive at Greece, you'll find an Ascending Sands and a bunch of chests that cause fleeting echoes to open. Interacting with the sands will force you to enter a gauntlet of sorts. You must eliminate enough of Valhalla's chosen to unlock the path forward. The requirement starts off at 3, but after multiple runs it caps at 6. The more time you spend defeating Valhalla's chosen, the more difficult they become. During these arena fights, you can come across multiple Greek enemies. These include the Undead Legionnaires, Sirens, Minotaurs, Wraiths, Harpies, Centaurs, and Cyclopes. The Greek enemies have a unique attack. If you're hit by an unblockable attack, they'll create a tether, and if you fail to break it, they'll siphon your Spartan Rage. You'll find optional challenge arenas like the Aegean Boat, the Desert of Lost Souls, and the Forum. In the Aegean Boat and the Desert of Lost Souls, you have to kill enemies quickly enough to get a gold score. Completing this will reward you with a Divine Triumph. The Forum has you fight one of the 12 Berserkers, including King Hrolf himself. Once you complete your time in Greece, you have to enter the sands and beat the final boss, Tyr. In each different version of the fight, he'll bring out a different weapon from his travels. In your first run, he'll wield a shield and a spear, which, while it could be attributed to Kratos' Greek origins, is actually Norse in design. The second weapon he has is an Aztec Macuahuitl. His third weapon is an Egyptian Kapesh, and finally he brings out a Japanese katana. What I like about this is that this could all potentially hint at future mythologies God of War will tackle, especially since Egypt has been heavily speculated to be our next pantheon. I'm of the opinion that roguelites are being done to death. If your game is built specifically for the genre, like Hades and Have a Nice Death, then it's excusable. But game modes like Ghost Runner 2's Roguerunner.exe mode, The Last of Us 2's No Return mode, and to an extent Warframe's of Deviri Paradox, feel like they are an afterthought, only added to create artificial player retention. The biggest problem with these roguelite modes is that when I complete the game mode, I have no reason to return to it. Example, Hades gives me multiple reasons to want to come back after clearing my first escape attempt. At that point, the main story isn't considered complete yet. I have a bunch of weapon aspects I want to acquire, companions to collect, and keepsakes to upgrade. Hades also has an addicting gameplay loop that makes me want to keep coming back for more. Compare this to Rogue Runner and Deviri. Rogue Runner, while being fun for what it was, misses the entire point of a roguelite, that being the different runs. You can't experiment with different builds like you can in other roguelites, so I really only played it for the 100%. For me at least, the only reason to play Deviri is to get the Incarnate Genesis adapters for my weapons. Once I got all of them and after I farmed for Coolervo, I haven't been playing the mode for a good while. I can see it really benefiting newer players, but for veterans like myself, it doesn't make me want to come back. To an extent, that's how I felt about Valhalla before it was released. I was worried that the mode wouldn't get much retention from me, but it was quite the opposite. It might just be because, as I said in part 2, Ragnarok's combat is a major improvement over 2018, but the general gameplay loop is pretty satisfying. There's no shortage of fights, and the sanctuaries are a nice breath of fresh air, and the more glyphs I stack, the more powerful I become. I was able to get that feeling of experimenting with different builds. For example, I had a run completely dedicated to the Blades of Chaos and Legacy Rage. It's basically a standard roguelite, but the way God of War Ragnarok's combat works makes it a hell of a fun time. Also, I should probably review Tyr's fight. I love this fight because it gives off the same energy as Sword Saint Ishin from Sekiro. Some of his combo strings can be predicted quick enough for you to counter it, but others require critical thinking in order to counter. One fuck up can be incredibly detrimental, but it's all the better if you just power through it. He does have annoying summons, but they aren't a major obstacle, they're just a minor phase of the fight. And the fact that he has 4 different weapons to choose from, all from different regions, harkens back to the fact that he traveled all across the land, collecting relics from his travels. And I feel that's a really cool detail. In terms of lore, like Sword Saint Ishin, he doesn't have any negative intentions towards Kratos. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Tyr just wants to help Kratos in his journey of acceptance and get a good fight out of it. This is, I feel, also Tyr in his prime. He has 4 different sets of weapons to use against you, bringing with them a different fight each time. It's also the first time in God of War history where a God of War fights a God of War. God, try saying that 3 times fast. Anyway, it wins because of that concept alone. Valhalla's soundtrack is pretty much fanfare, but fanfare at its best. While Ragnarok's main soundtrack has the main 2018 theme as its motif, Valhalla references a bunch of other games in the series, most notably the Vengeful Spartan and God of War 2's main theme. There are 2 different angles I like to view this soundtrack at, the aforementioned fanfare and the thematic relevance of it. Master Thyself, the main theme of Valhalla, is such a banger song. It is the closest the Norse games have gotten to having their own Vengeful Spartan. It's high octane, loud, basically everything you would ask for from God of War 1 or 2's soundtrack. And of course, the ending references the ever iconic part of the Vengeful Spartan. Bear and his team couldn't have composed a better title theme for this DLC. Valhalla is the song that plays when Freya and the Valkyries first appear. This song has a very otherworldly theme to it. It makes sense because this is a region that we never visited, both in 2018 and Ragnarok. We also knew next to nothing about it apart from the Einherjar's link to it, so it's again fitting to have this sort of theme. It's a very beautiful song, all things considered. Definitely one of Bear's best. But there's also the fact that the lyrics in the song are the same as Sigrun's boss theme in 2018. I like this because it shows us how the relationship between Kratos and the Valkyries evolved from being endgame bosses to now trusted allies. Face the Past, Face the Future is the song that plays when you first unlock the Blade of Olympus. It has both a foreign and godly feel to it. The instrumentals and tone of the song don't fit the OST of the base game, but perfectly fits Valhalla since Valhalla is all about the Greek era. The song also gives off this weird sense of extreme power, especially during the part where Kratos actually summons the blade. Clearing the Mind is the only boss theme in the DLC. It's also the most fitting for a character like Tyr. It's got a quick tempo, which makes sense since Tyr is relentless in his attacks. It's not too loud and high octane because neither Kratos nor Tyr want to kill each other. This is just a really complicated therapy session between the two. Also, if you listen to the different versions of the fight, not just the one on Spotify, each one has a different entrance jingle to fit the weapon tier uses. It's one of the best boss themes in the entire game. The path. Just everything about the path. The song itself, the scene it's connected to, the thematic relevance, the fan service. This song does it all. It's a very slowed down version of the Desert of Lost Souls theme from God of War 1. This is added on top of the fact that there's another rendition of 2018's leitmotif. This fact alone encompasses the entire point of Valhalla. It's about Kratos facing the past to face the future. He literally faces the past during the young Kratos scene, but it's also to be taken in a metaphorical sense. This song is absolutely beautiful and is attached to the best scene in the entirety of Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok Valhalla is a high contender for the best DLC expansion of all time. I'll try my best to set aside the rose-tinted glasses for this one. It's completely free despite having enough content that I'd be okay paying $40 for. It provides an entire epilogue, which is again much more than I'd expect for a free DLC in 2024. It focuses completely on Kratos accepting the truth that his legacy was very complicated, but it shouldn't define who he is now. It's filled with constant fan service, but it's fan service that directly benefits the plot. And while the game mode it ended up being is a genre that's getting a bit worn out, it manages to still be a fun experience. It's got enough replayability to serve its purpose as a roguelite, and that's combined with the addictive combat of Ragnarok.
You are certain you remember nothing of this place?
Oh, nothing that would help us.
You are cruel, arrogant, and selfish. But you are more than that. What is in there?
I'm not here to spoil that for you. Only to help you prepare.
Well, that's it. The God of War Ragnarok Retrospective series is over. This series has been in the works since November of 2023. I started this because of the adoration, passion, and respect I have for not just Ragnarok, but the entire God of War series. So if you stuck around for the entire series, thank you so much for your continued support. If this was the first video of mine you've seen, then I'd highly suggest checking out the rest of the videos on this channel. Now, you're probably wondering, what's next? Where are you gonna go from here? And I honestly have no idea. There are no immediate games I want to make a traditional video essay on other than maybe Final Fantasy 16, but I'd rather just wait for the PC port. Now, I am still going to try to make the reviews that I've had planned for a while. This includes Warframe's Jade Shadows and 1999 updates, Zenless Zone Zero, Black Myth Wukong, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Rivals 2. I'll probably also make the odd Let's Plays with my friends, and I'm hoping to make our yearly VGA's reaction as well. The only idea I'm dancing around is shorter, one-off opinionated video essays. I'll probably just find topics that interest me or are currently trending and give my 2 cents. Stuff like the state of crossovers in fighting games, or the flawed mentality of the gaming is dead rhetoric, or why are video games less complete than before? That doesn't mean I'll make videos out of all of these, again, I'm simply dancing around them. That's all for now, I guess. Follow me on Instagram for consistent updates, follow me on Twitter to see feet pics and fat bitches in my likes because I refuse to give Elon my $8. I'll hopefully see you guys at the end of the month.